This is Cape Breton Accents,
I've been here for like 5 years. It just feels like home away from home.
a podcast hosted by CBU President David Dingwall that celebrates the stories and perspectives that make our community so vibrant and unique.
Yeah, because it's important that students take part in extracurricular activities.
From campus life to global impact, we're excited to share the stories that define Cape Breton University.
CBU is family, and you're gonna love every minute of it.
Good morning and welcome to Cape Breton Accents. My name is David Dingwall, President and Vice Chancellor of Cape Breton University. We are especially honored this morning to welcome a very special guest to our program, Diana Fox Carney, who joins us on campus for the grand opening of the Kehoe Forum, Canada's first arena dedicated to women's and para-hockey. Madame Fox is a British-Canadian economist and a strategic advisor. She works with companies and investors seeking opportunities in the transition to a more climate-resilient and nature-positive economy. With a professional background in strategy consulting, research, and natural resource management, Mme Carney has held leadership roles at prominent think tanks in Canada as well as the United Kingdom. Her work has spanned Africa, Europe, and North America, engaging both the private sector and the non-for-profit sector as well. She's a fellow of the Basile School of International Affairs, holds a master's degree in agricultural economics from the University of Oxford, and in international relations from the University of Pennsylvania. Born in the United Kingdom, Madame Fox Carney met her husband, what's his name? Mark, yeah, while they were both students at Oxford, where she also played university hockey. They married in 1994 and are proud parents of 4 adult children. Madame Fox Carney, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Cape Breton University, to Cape Breton Accents, and most importantly, to Cape Breton. Now the questions. Over the past year, your life has become much, much more public. How have you navigated this transition? And how have you and your family adjusted to this new chapter in an amazing career for both of you?
Thank you very much, and thanks to everyone. Appreciate being here. It's my first time in Cape Breton, and very excited by that. So you're right, it's been a big change, and it was perhaps a more sudden change than most people have experienced in my role. It's been mostly good, and sometimes hard, I'm not going to lie. But I think the one advantage that I had is, or that we all had, is though my husband had not been a politician, he had been a prominent public figure before, as a governor, and particularly in the UK, which many of you may know is known for a certain amount of enthusiasm for pulling down public figures. So he had a lot of experience with that. And we as a family had a certain amount of experience of being public figures. So that helped me a little bit. But most of all, I think, honestly, it's the fact that I'm fortunate to effectively be from Ottawa. I moved to Ottawa in 2003, so it's been my home for more than 20 years. And I have great friends in Ottawa, and I think frequently of how difficult this job would be if I didn't have that support locally, you're a little bit locked in when you live in the Prime Minister's residence. There's a lot of fences and a lot of very nice RCMP agents around you, but it can feel a little isolating. So I'm fortunate that with the support of I live very, very close to where my previous house was, like 300 meters from my house to my new house. And so it's really the support of my friends and the support of Canadians that I've met, and I met a lovely bunch of people this morning at a breakfast, and the expressed support for what my husband's done and for the sacrifices that have been made, which are there, but it's also a great privilege to be doing this and to represent Canada on a global stage and also to help build the country. So these things have helped me. And, there are days when it all seems slightly overwhelming, but I'm sure that's the same for everyone in their lives.
So now you have friends in Ottawa and friends in Cape Breton.
Exactly.
It couldn't go any better. You played university hockey at a time when opportunities for women were even more limited in terms of what they are today. So what do you notice most when you see today's generation of female athletes?
It's funny, I think when you're young, you kind of don't perceive the impediments so much. You think everything's possible. And I'm struck, I'm reading a book, I was given a book for Christmas on running, and I do run, I still do a lot of sporting things, probably not as well as I used to. But it was about the fact that, when I was born, which I'm not going to tell you when it was, but it was a long time ago, women were not allowed to run marathons at that time and things like that. And that it's so shocking to me, because I felt when I was at university that although there was no profile for women's sport, there was women's sport. I think what's changed now is the expectation, the right, quite legitimate expectation that women's sport should be and can be on an equal footing with men's sport. And I see in particular the PWHL, the Women's Hockey League, I think has made a huge difference for young hockey players, feeling that there is a future for them after they've done what they might do through high school and possibly in university, that there is a place to go, that women's sport commands audiences, is economically contributing in a way that men's sport has always been recognized to be doing. But I was at PWHL game last week in Ottawa, and it was jammed with kids and all these great teams of kids shrieking, and they are just as engaged as people are with the NHL teams. So I really like that fact. There clearly are issues around facilities, and that's why it's so great to have the facility here. And I know we've discussed the sort of the grandfathering of some of those beer teams and things like that, and how that can push out young women's teams. So I've sat in some cold arenas with my kids, but what I see in the kids now, and I think is really positive, is a sort of, we can do this, we can be the best that we can be. If we want to take this to the highest level, nothing's going to stop us. Now, there may be some impediments there, but there's a level of confidence that I really admire, and good evidence that that's justified.
Yeah, I think the barriers are coming down, maybe not as quickly as some people would like. But we know here, for instance, here in Cape Breton, that it was pretty significant in terms of the bias against female hockey. Now that it is here, there's a complete sea change of a value and appreciation of female hockey. Do you see that in other areas of Canada as well?
Well, certainly in Ottawa, I would see that. I think you're right to describe it. It's almost like a sort of pent-up appetite, and maybe people weren't as vocal about it. But as soon as there was an opportunity, it's like, of course this is important. Of course this is, and in some cases, I have to say that I think that women's hockey is much more fun to watch than men's hockey, because it's a tiny bit slower, so you can see the puck a bit better when you get old. Not much slower.
You taking a jab at me?
But I don't like the fighting in men's hockey, so I'm very, there is a tiny bit of push and pull in women's hockey, but not nearly so much. And I will say I've never had a penalty in all the years I played hockey.
Are you sure?
No, I think it's amazing. I think you're absolutely right that there still are, impediments. The women girls play hockey, but play other sports, increasingly. And I think some of the sports in this country we've done a really good job at. I mean, women's soccer is, we are globally better at women's soccer than we are at men's soccer. Not to say that we haven't got a great team and we're going to do fantastic in the World Cup this year, but we've done well. Rugby, I was fortunate enough to see the Women's World Cup rugby final between Canada and England, and if anyone asked me, I was definitely supporting Canada. I don't know why people would even question my allegiance, but we've really women's sport. I think the range of sports in which Canadian women excel is somewhat broader than the range of sports in which Canadian men excel at a global level. There you go. I don't know whether that's scientifically true, but it feels right now that feels true to me. So I really think that having those role models, having those opportunities, seeing the celebration of women's sport. But I will say that, I have kids who've played sport and who've stopped, and I think there is still an issue of sport being not cool at certain ages for girls. I never felt that, so I don't know why people do feel that, but I do see women dropping out of sports at some level.
Yeah, it's not cool anymore.
It's not cool anymore. I don't know why. I thought it was cool. I still think it's cool. But so there is, some of it is the external environment, and of course there are issues of cost of sport. And I do think one of the challenges of sport these days is that it's so intensive so early, and if you're doing well in sport, I did fairly well in sport, but I really never dedicated anything like the amount of time, energy, money to sport that is required now to succeed. When I see these kids playing hockey, 8 times a week and things like that, it worries me, and there's a lot of injury very early on, and so I hope that you can still keep the joy in sport, and it's not kind of bled out of these kids through the sacrifices they have to make early on to play at a serious level.
The Kehoe Forum, which you're going to officially open later today, has an amazing history. It goes back to 1987, when Cape Breton and the university, as well as the municipality, hosted the first Winter Games here in Cape Breton. And that event transformed sports in this community. It took it to another level, both in terms of sport and recreation and the interest, both of male and females. And then, as time went on, 30 years, 35 years, the facility here was run down. Some people wanted to close it. Some people wanted to have it for soccer. Some wanted to have it for a storage area. And then we met a young lady by the name who you've met, Christina Lamy. And she came to us and she laid on the table the plight of young female women having the opportunity to get ice time. And her presentation, it touched the heartstrings because she had facts, she was sincere, and she had a calling. And as a result of that, the university, the board, in fact, Robert Sampson, who was here, was the chair of the board when we made that decision, is that we remodeled that facility, $40 million. And we've dedicated it to women's hockey. So I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why do dedicated spaces like this matter in creating real equity for Canadians all across the country?
So for me, a lot of it is that really public affirmation that women matter and they are equal and they have every right to expect the same treatment and the same facilities as their brothers and fathers. And so that is critical. It's also just practically makes things more possible. And I've seen the numbers of the, how the Women's League is increasing here, both, the old people like me playing, but the young kids. And I think having that direction of travel and understanding that you are important and that you will have access to these things and you don't have to, I think I explained to you that my greatest hockey triumph took place at 2 a.m. In an arena with no spectators, as you can imagine, at 2 a.m. That shouldn't be the way it is. So I think it's critical, and I think it's a really great affirmation, and the fact that you can now attract the tournament that is about to take place, that you have facilities that are, you distinguish yourself by prioritizing female hockey, and that you can put that on show to the world, helps build this momentum, and just the opportunity to see these elite kids playing will also help build momentum for hockey in this province and in this country.
So you played women's hockey?
Yes.
Great Britain? How many years?
So unfortunately, undergraduate degrees are 3 years in the UK, and I unfortunately didn't discover hockey in my first year. Somehow I missed it at the
Orientation.
Sort of fair orientation thing, and I didn't know. And in the UK, there are only two, I think to this date, there are only 2 university hockey teams, and those are at Oxford and Cambridge, and certainly on the men's side are principally furnished with Canadians and Americans. Seeking, not particularly good hockey players seeking glory in the UK. However, that wasn't me, and I was a very, I would say, recreational would even be too positive a word. I grew up, there were very few rinks in the UK. We occasionally used to go on the bus with our kind of village outing and drive 2 hours to Birmingham or London and struggle around. But I was a field hockey player. And in those days, and I hope still, if I heard of an opportunity that was slightly unusual, I wanted to take it. So I saw this thing, ice hockey, and I thought, I got to try this. And so I ended up playing 2 years as an undergrad. I somehow took to it, and I think despite I still have the elbow injury from having extremely poor equipment, but the equipment helped me get better at skating quite quickly. And I played for 2 years as an undergraduate there, and I then went to university in the States. And I was fortunate that the university I went to had a hockey team, a female hockey team, but it wasn't like a full varsity one, so that I was allowed to play as a graduate student and things like that. So I played in the US. And then when I went back to do my second, more vocational master's degree, I'm not going to lie, I did think, well, it has to be at Oxford or Cambridge, and of course it can't be at Cambridge, because that's the only place I can play hockey. So I went back and I played for a further year there. But then I played in Ottawa until we left. We went to the UK in 2013, and I played both in Toronto and in Ottawa. I played either on women's teams or on some co-ed teams. So
when you were at Cambridge, what was the total number of years there? 3?
I was in Oxford.
Oxford?
Yes.
You weren't at Cambridge?
No.
Oh, God, I had mistaken. But you had a coach who's a dear friend of mine.
I did?
He's the president of King's University, Bill Leahy.
That is indeed
Tell my
right.
audience, what kind of a coach was he?
He was tough. So I had 2 coaches. One, Peter Oliver, who is now living in Ottawa and teaches law at Ottawa U, and he's quite gentle. He's reasonably tall and very gentle and measured. Bill, maybe some of you know him. He's not that tall, but he's very solid, right? And the thing that I most remember is him just saying, don't look at the face, don't look at the stick, look at the shoulder and check.
Did you comply?
I complied, but I never got the penalties. So it was full contact, our hockey, from the start. So Bill and Pete, I will say, they played, the men's team used to play at like midnight. They had their practices. And Bill and Peter somehow got roped in or volunteered. I suspect they volunteered to coach us as the women's team, and they had to stay a further, hour and a half, 2 hours to coach us into the middle of the night. And they were nothing short of dedicated. They traveled around and drove the minibus around the country. It was a pretty shoestring operation. And in my second year there, we won the English National Ice Hockey Championship.
Here, 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 here. So what role do institutions like universities, national sport organizations, and governments, federal, provincial, municipal, play in dismantling some of those inequities that we've seemed to acknowledge and pass?
I think that all institutions have a role, and I think that it's not just the public institutions. It is our private, families and communities too. But I think what governments, obviously governments can fund things, right? But they can.
Oh, I know that.
But I think it's this prioritization and setting the framework of equality. Yes, you do need the facilities and you do need this dedicated home, but it's this, and I think I see in Canada always a very strong push towards equity. We don't always succeed, but we value all Canadians, and putting that into practice. What does that mean? Understanding the constraints. Is the constraint the facilities? Is the constraint the cost? Is the constraint, the lack of female officials for games and things like that can just make it feel very hostile for girls playing? And I think obviously different institutions play a role in that, but the power comes when everyone works together. And I know you've had some generous philanthropic support for your arena, but there's also been some government support along the way, and that's what makes things work when we all work together for a common objective.
As a mom, how has sport shaped your values and your confidence that you hope to instill in your children?
So I think, for me, sport was and is still a big part of my life. And for me, I'm not doing team sports anymore, but a lot of what the value is that team sport. I think, some of the greatest joys I've had in my life have been in sporting victory. And I early on realized that that individual sports weren't really my thing. I played tennis moderately seriously when I was quite young, and then I lost a game that I should have won, and I felt so angry with myself for months. And I thought, this is not for me. I need to be in a team where you share the joy and you share the pain, and you learn how to lose as well. And I do think that sports, and this is something I try and share with my kids. Team sports teach you how much more you can achieve together. They teach you how important it is to be a reliable member of a team. You have to show up for practice. You have to be there when the ball's passed, the puck's there. You're doing it not for yourself, but for the broader team. That's important. But it also teaches you how to lose, basically. We can't always win, and it teaches how to gain from, I'm not going to say failure, but from losing a game, how you process that and move on. And I think those kinds of lessons in life are actually, really essential. And I think it's not a surprise that many successful female leaders, CEOs, etc., have sports in their background and have learned early on to work with others and to overcome adversity.
So let's jump from the family. So you've worked across many different sectors, including economics, natural resource management. What sort of lessons from sport continue to influence your professional leadership style? Easy question.
I think I partly answered that in the sense that I probably treat my family a little bit like I treat my work. You know, I expect them to show up. I need to show up. I do think, you know, yeah, one of the key things in life I've always felt, and one of the things on which I pride myself is being reliable. If you say you're going to do something, you do that. And that's when I work with people, that's what I expect of them, and I think that's what they hopefully expect of each other, and that I think that makes for a good functioning team. I think it's a sort of chicken and egg thing. I mean, I suspect many people who play sport or for whom sport is a large part of their life are inherently quite competitive. And
I didn't know that.
I am quite competitive when it comes to, I challenge myself, and now I'm just, running and skiing and things like that, but I do challenge myself. And maybe that's sometimes a mixed blessing to always want to put your best foot forward. And as I say, to understand that you're never going to always win, but to not be satisfied with underperformance, I guess. So maybe that makes me a hard taskmaster, I don't know. But hopefully also an understanding one. I do think the sort of nurturing that must take place on teams, sports teams, and in the workplace, in the sense that, while you can talk about everyone showing up for each other all the time, everyone has bad days, everyone has different things going on in their lives, and I think everyone needs to be heard, whether on a team or in a workplace. So it can't always be the kind of hard edge of competition. There is to get the best out of teams, we need to work together.
Not all universities are the same. And however, there are a few, and I would put CBU among the few, is an anchor in their communities. This university would not exist if it were not for the community. How do you see institutions like ours, Cape Breton University, contributing to social change well beyond teaching and research, which are fundamental to a university? I don't downplay them. Mm-hmm. I think they're very significant and very important.
So I've already heard this morning at my breakfast how important this university has been to the regeneration of Sydney and the provincial, or this part, the economy of this part of the province. I understand that a number of your, overseas students have stayed in town and changed what it looks like. And I think that is, that's huge. As you mentioned, I've worked in various think tanks, and though I've principally worked on environmental, climate type things, I've also worked on just sort of broader social issues and economic development. And the power of universities in their towns is second to none, really, to create an economic engine, but also to create desirable places to live that attract like-minded people that can benefit from the conversations that are taking place, some of the cultural things that take place around universities, whether it's performances, etc., some of the sporting events, the attraction of coming to, having a team. So I think, universities are key for that. I think what they're able to do is to set expectations, values within their walls, which then permeate more broadly in the communities in which they operate. So that in that way, they could be an engine not just of economic development, but also of social change and acceptance. And I'm sure this university has played that role. As I say, I know you've had a number of overseas students who've stayed, and that changes the community, and a shared respect on that front is fantastic.
A couple of months ago, I traveled to China, and we signed 5 memorandums of understanding with different universities, major universities in China. But one in particular that we had discussions with was very, very interested in sport. So we had discussed with them the probability, the possibility of Canada and that university in China doing a memorandum of understanding in order to enhance their hockey ability, both for females as well as for adults. I was surprised that their response was overly positive. So my next question fits in there. How can Canada position itself as a global leader in championing women's sport, and what will it take to get there?
If I knew the answer, no.
But you're going to China in a couple of weeks. If you need somebody to go along with you.
Well, I think the fact that you're taking that initiative helps. But listen, I've already said that I think Canada is globally recognized for success, and success against the odds sometimes in women's sports. And, the rugby is a case in point. The England team that did, they did beat us, but they're the only team in the tournament, and globally, that are funded. They're professional rugby players, the women's team, whereas Canada and all the other contenders were amateurs. And Canada, I know the women's team had to run a GoFundMe to pay for their tickets and things like that, and it would be great if that were not the case. Obviously, it costs a lot to be a sporting person, and so we do have to address those things. But my point is that, Canada, I think we've punched above our weight in some of these sports, even with relatively limited resources. I'm sure we will do well in the upcoming Winter Olympics. That's always a pleasure to watch as a Canadian. Wasn't such fun as a Brit. We can't just sort of expect the women's teams to kind of go and do their thing and ride on their coattails. So I think your question is more, how can we be more deliberate about being seen as a beacon of hope for women's sports? I do think, we, in general, are holding the line on women's rights, and we still need to do a lot more. Globally, there's a long way to go. We haven't won all the battles yet, but I'm very pleased that Canada is not retreating in the way that some are retreating at the moment. So I think we can hold our head up high, but to translate that into real opportunity for women will require persistent, adequate funding, adequate facilities, etc., but also a real emphasis and a real recognition from those people, maybe myself included, but certainly my husband, people who are out there speaking up for Canada and pointing out that we are leading, that this is very important to our national identity, and that women have an absolutely equal right to represent their country and to succeed as men do, and that we as Canadians want to watch that, want to support that, and are passionate about women's sport.
My final question is the following. This podcast will be seen by thousands and thousands of people, both in Canada and around the globe. So for those young women that are listening, whether they be athletes, students, or aspiring leaders, what advice would you offer to those who may feel the odds are stacked against them, but still want to move forward?
Well, firstly, never give up. I think what's really important in life, and this is, my children are probably bored of me saying this to them, but is to be persistent and interested in everything and to learn from everything. So learn from mistakes you make. We all take wrong steps. We all do this. Not kind of lose your thread because you took a step in the wrong direction, did something you didn't enjoy. My career, you made it sound very coherent, but it's been, all over the shop. And partly that's because, I'm interested in a wide range of things, but I also think it's really important to kind of navigate your way and say, okay, well, I did this. What did I learn? I learned this about this environment and what I like and what I don't like and how to manage people and how, maybe the gender balance in this environment and things like that. So I would say you need to, be persistent. You need to be inquisitive. You need to hopefully, have goals and move towards them and feel a sense of possibility. And I think that's the challenge. I think I've been fortunate in my life that I've had access to a great education, other things like that have given me a sense of confidence and possibility that some people undoubtedly are lacking. So I think we need to make sure that there are second chances in life for people who, for whatever reason, have fallen off the trajectory they wish to be on. But the other thing I would say is that women need to support each other. We're not always that good. I think we should all appreciate. And I was fortunate to have some time with Elder Marshall this morning, and we were talking about this not being a zero-sum world, and we have to support each other. Communities have to support each other, but women certainly. I think it's incumbent on women who are successful to make spaces for those who are coming up through the ranks and to create environments where they can flourish. And I do think, yes, we don't want it to be the case, but it is necessary sometimes to give special places for women, whether it's a hockey arena or to call women out to make sure that they feel able to contribute to a conversation. And I'm going to end by saying there's one thing which is always stuck in my mind. I worked in one of my workplaces. It was actually when we were back in the UK 10 years or so ago. And it was a think tank. It was a fairly small organization, quite gender equal. But there was a rule in this organization that after a meeting, women were not allowed to clear the coffee cups from the table or do anything. And that the sense of sort of empowerment, like we had to be reminded not to be the ones who were clearing up after others and, making it okay so that, not doing it only for the men, but just like we're always sort of, making things right.
Stop looking at me.
So there are some small steps that people can take in their environments, I think, to make it clear that women are there and they have an equal footing with men. Yes, we may have different sort of personalities and predispositions, and I know there are issues around children and caring responsibilities, but let's make it, let's make women feel empowered to be just as great as men, even better.
Very nice, very nice. Later today, you will meet the builder of the Kehoe Forum. You will also see His Worship the Mayor again. There's a senator here in attendance as well. But on behalf of the Board of Governors and the faculty and staff and students at Cape Breton University, I want to extend to you a very sincere thank you. Your presence here today is shining a light on something that a lot of us have missed over the years, and shining a light on that disrespectful discrimination against young women. So for that, we are very, very grateful for your presence. As I said to your office in Ottawa, this will be an enormous task, is shining that light so that others can see what needs to be done. So on behalf of all of us who are here today, I offer my sincere thank you.